Please join me in welcoming our next speaker.
Hey, thanks. And I actually want to start with just thanking the people who've organized this, because also everybody who's organizing this is a young scientist, a postdoc, a PhD student, and they are doing this while doing their other work as well. So I really want to thank them. I also really want to thank you all for being here and standing up for science today. So thank you for being here. My name is Hyman. I'm a professor of cognitive psychology at Western Washington University. It's just a little bit up the road in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, thanks for all you Western people. Western's a primarily undergraduate university, and I actually really love working there. I was a first-generation college student in my family. Any other first-gens out there? Yeah. And I'm proud to support the next generation of college students. And I could talk today about the effects of the funding cuts and the rug pulls that are going on in a regional state school, because we're feeling it. The on and off budget cuts. Is the money there or is the money not there? It's there one day and not there the next, and it's gone the next. The threats around diversity work, equity work, inclusion work that are constant, the threats to our students and their funding, the harassment of faculty and staff around their teaching and scholarship. We're feeling all of this, even at our regional state school. But I actually want to focus on a topic that's more directly related to my scholarly expertise. I'm a cognitive psychologist. My students and I conduct research on attention and memory, and we've done a lot of work on how people adopt false beliefs and false memories. So I want to talk about disinformation today. I want to talk about disinformation campaigns. I want to actually talk about the right-wing bullshit machine. And let me be clear, bullshit here is a technical term. I'm using it as a technical term. It's a technical term that means, well, actually it really just kind of means bullshit. You know, spreading, the intentional spreading of false information with the intention to mislead people and confuse things. Disinformation, it's not a single bit of information. Rather, disinformation is part of a campaign, and disinformations have an underlying deep false narrative. A disinformation campaign mixes true and false information, but with goals. There's always a goal with their disinformation campaigns. There's always intentionality there. Someone is pushing that underlying false narrative for a reason. A disinformation campaign has a political or a financial goal for the people pushing it. Of course, there are a lot of people who come to believe the disinformation campaigns, and they share that information on social media and other places. They also will contribute to that false narrative. They provide small stories and evidence that can be woven into this overall false narrative. And the leaders of these disinformation campaigns, they pick up those stories and they spread them more widely through social media, through news media, through political communication. Now, why do we need to talk about disinformation today, here, now? Because disinformation campaigns are the foundation of the anti-science and anti-education attacks that are going on at this moment. If you just peel back some of these cuts and attacks just a little bit, you're going to see the disinformation. You're going to see the bullshit that's at the foundation. And I want to give you just two examples today. I could go on for a long time, but let's talk about two examples. The vaccine disinformation is my first example. Let me be clear about the truth at first, because whenever we talk about disinformation, you should always do a truth sandwich. You should start with the truth and talk about the false shit, the bullshit, and then talk about the truth again, just to remind people. And so let me be clear. Vaccines are safe and effective. It's really one of those medical research miracles. It's improved life, and actually it's improved life expectancy. It's the reason that, you know, most of you have grown up to be adults. It's because you didn't die from those childhood illnesses. But vaccine disinformation has long been pushed by a variety of people. The overall disinformation narrative is that vaccines aren't safe and that they may actually cause harm. Maybe getting immunity from catching the disease will be better. Maybe eating well or particular nutraceuticals will provide some form of protection. And the lies about vaccines are just rampant. The vaccines cause autism. They may cause infertility. The COVID vaccine was some new untested methodology. And all of these pieces of bullshit are the building blocks of an anti-vaccine and anti-science disinformation campaign. And, you know, even if people don't buy into each one of these little bits of information, they may start to doubt the overall value and effectiveness of vaccines. They may say, well, where there's all this smoke, there must be a fire. And actually, there's no fire. There's just a disinformation smoke machine. It's just spewing out a lot of fog. It's trying to confuse the information and hide stuff. And somebody's benefiting someplace from this, but you're the ones being hurt. And what's the outcome of vaccine disinformation? Well, bad information leads to bad decisions. And intentional disinformation also leads to bad decisions for you, but somebody's usually profiting in some fashion. And so when we look at these bad decisions, well, parents are refusing to get their children the childhood vaccines. And we have a resurgence of childhood illnesses. We have measles outbreaks in the United States right now. We have at least one child and one adult dead because of this, because of the vaccine disinformation. We have people choosing not to get the COVID vaccine. And these refusals to vaccinate are actually different based on the politics of the people involved. Conservatives are now much less likely to get vaccinated and have their children vaccinated. And so exposure to vaccine disinformation is deadly. But the other outcome of this vaccine disinformation campaign is the cutting of support for vaccine research and vaccine development. We're seeing cutting of the support for the teams that track disease outbreaks. We're not sharing information about the disease outbreaks either. And with putting RFK in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services, I mean, putting RFK in charge is kind of like putting the fox in charge of the hen house, right? And it really is that because of the bird flu outbreak, because he's not releasing all the information around that. It's why we have that. The outbreak's going to get worse, and it's probably why you're having problems finding eggs in the stores, because the fox is in charge here. And vaccine disinformation is part of the foundation underlying a lot of the cuts to biomedical research that are ongoing right now. Let's talk about climate disinformation as well. It's my second example. And again, we know what the truth is. Global warming is occurring, and it's causing global climate change. Humans and the burning of fossil fuels are the primary causes of climate change, right? We're clear on all of that. You're here today. And here again, there's a long-running disinformation campaign. Much of this campaign is funded by oil companies, so it's political and financial. Yeah, boo oil companies. Yeah. Look, the disinformation has been that global warming isn't happening, or it's not human caused, or maybe it won't be that bad, or it's happening but there's nothing to be done about it. Disinformation about the effectiveness of solar and wind energy, just so much bullshit being spread out there. And even if people don't buy the overall, every single last one of these pieces, they may still start to have doubts. And here's an interesting aspect of those doubts. Most people in the United States and around the world actually believe that climate change is happening, that it's human caused, and want their governments to do something about it. The vast majority, actually. But the vast majority also doubt that other people believe this. And so one thing that happens with the disinformation campaign is that it makes it really hard for people to know that their ideas, their beliefs are widely shared. And most of us understand these sorts of things now, but don't understand that other people do as well. The climate change disinformation is also contributing to the anti-science and anti-education attacks that are ongoing right now. Climate change information has been removed from federal websites, much to the dismay of farmers. I saw somebody out there with a farming sign, and insurance companies. The current administration is making cuts not to just research grants, but to NOAA, as we heard earlier today. And it's almost like they think if we ignore climate change, maybe it won't happen. Or if we don't track hurricanes, if we don't track these major storms and don't track fires, they won't hurt us. That's just not going to be true. But again, if you peel things back just a little bit, you can see the disinformation campaigns that are the foundation of these anti-science attacks. Peel back a little bit further, and you can always find who's actually benefiting, who's profiting from these things, and what are the political powers that be. So what do? I mean, we can contact our federal representatives. That's important. There are cards over here to fill out to do that, and you should be making those phone calls. We need to have the funds that have been cut. We need to have those things dispersed. These things have already been funded by Congress. The administration doesn't just get to cut them. We need to have that money coming out. We can join rallies, and we can stand up for science. We can advocate for science. Matter of fact, it's really important to join rallies and to be out because other people need to see how many people believe and support science. It's important for us not only to talk about what happens at the federal level, it's important to talk about what happens in our state, right here in Washington State. I know people who work in K-12 education and they're seeing cuts. They're seeing budgetary cuts and it's hard to get enough funds, so getting class sizes are growing. We're taking cuts at the university level as well. And that's just backwards. To fight disinformation, to combat disinformation, you actually need to increase education. You need to be increasing educational funding. Rather than cutting higher ed, we need to be increasing funding to higher ed. The last time I checked, I actually just checked this week by checking in with one of our administrators at our university, the state of Washington needs more people with college degrees than we actually educate in the state every year. We import people with college degrees in Washington State. Why not? Yeah, thank you. Why not increase the seats in colleges here? Why not take advantage of the people looking to leave some of these red states and go someplace else? Grow education here. I actually really think a lot about this because I know that there are a lot of LGBTQ students in other states who would like to come someplace where they would feel safe. I know that there are a lot of people of color and people from underrepresented backgrounds who would like to come someplace on college where they would be safe. Washington is one of those places. We should be increasing our seats here. And lastly, all of us need to be champions and advocates for science. We need to talk about our work. We need to talk about what's cool. We need to talk about what's interesting. We need to talk about the cool advances that will improve people's lives. We even need to talk about the basic stuff that we're not sure how it's going to improve people's lives yet. Because science isn't just doing the research and writing the papers and getting the publications. Science is always about sharing. And our work is funded by the public. We need to be sharing the work that we do. We also really need to fight that disinformation bullshit machine. Now, how do we do that? How do you clean up bullshit? I mean, in a barn, it's with a shovel and a hose and all that sort of stuff. But you know that bullshit is really sticky. And fact-checking is one thing that people talk about a lot, and fact-checking is important, but trying to bring down a disinformation campaign by fact-checking each little piece of information is pretty much an impossible task. It's like some weird game of Jenga. You know that game where it's a tower built out of blocks, and the point of Jenga is you pull out a block, and then you pull out another block, and it gets weaker, and eventually the tower collapses. And so, you know, if you're doing this with the disinformation tower, and you fact check one of those little bits of information, you pull it out of the tower, and you think, maybe I want to make this whole thing weaker. But by the time you pulled out that one, and fact check that one bit of disinformation, there's like 3 more pieces of disinformation, a dozen more pieces, then piled around that tower to strengthen it. They are building disinformation faster than you can possibly fact check it. Yeah. And it's almost like they're cheating. Actually, they are cheating in the game. They're cheating because they can make up disinformation and bullshit, and you actually have to come up with truth in response. That takes work. So you cannot win the game when you play within their frame. You've got to change the narrative. And so you have to address the underlying disinformation. Look, people are lying about vaccines. They're safe and effective. People are lying about climate change. It's caused by humans, and we can correct it. You don't need to address every little piece of bullshit. You need to go after the whole tower, sweep down that entire pile of lies, but you also have got to build better narratives. We need a tower that's based on truth. We need to share the work we do. We need to be the champions of science and education, each of us, in everyday conversations, in our classrooms, in our letters to our representatives, in our public writing and our presentations. We need to give away science. We need to share the truth, because truth is actually the remedy of disinformation. Thank you.